So for those of you who do not already have a starter, we will be starting one together and you will be building it up for at least 1 week before you use it. For this, we need equal parts flour and water. Today we are using light rye. So if you cannot find light rye in the shop, make sure you buy dark rye and sieve out a lot of the bran, and you should have a lighter rye to use. The water, we are using tepid water, 50 grams goes in, and then 50 grams of light rye flour goes in as well. You can use your scraper to mix, but I actually like to use my hands. Why? Because actually the starter will feed off some of those lovely dead skin cells from my hand, and actually that's making my starter unique to me. At the end of the day, I'm going to be eating the bread, right? So you don't need to do this necessarily every time, as long as the first time you mix your starter, you have used your hands for it. Right, once you have mixed your starter together on day 1, that's it. You do not need to feed it again. Now you're going to transfer this into a jar, much like the one I have here. This is a Kilner jar, very good because of the hinged lid. While your starter is maturing on your counter, you always want to make sure it can breathe. So by leaving the lid open like that, there is an airway for your starter. Do not leave it like this on your counter because you will suffocate that starter. The starter is just equal parts flour and water mixed together, and it's actually using the temperature, the bacteria in the air, the environment that you are in to grow. So it's a wild yeast or wild fermentation. If you think about it logically, there's little bacteria floating around in the air, and that's what makes the starter unique to you, unique to your kitchen, unique to the city you live in. And that's why, for example, London sourdough is different to San Francisco sourdough, because they are in different places. The environment, the humidity, the temperature is all different. Now, this is all fair and well in summer. You're going to be having a great time in the next 7 days while you are feeding your starter every day, 50 grams flour, 50 grams water. It's going to be growing at a steady pace. There's going to be lots of activity, bubbles, aromatics. But in winter, maybe not so much the same, and that's all to do with temperature. Fermentation actually starts around 25 degrees, and we all know for sure in the UK, for example, in January, it's not really 25, is it? Even with the heating on, your kitchen may be sitting somewhere around 18 to 20 degrees. In that case, what I want you to do is put this jar in a warm spot. Maybe that is next to your radiator, maybe it's in your airing cupboard, somewhere nice and toasty. I've even heard people wrapping their jar in a blanket. So if that's you, that's okay, as long as your starter is nice and warm. I would also recommend using a large jar like this, because every day you're adding 50 grams flour, 50 grams water. By the time you hit the end of that week, you're going to have a jar full of starter. So it's important to make sure it has room to grow. Otherwise, it's going to grow outside your jar and fall on your counter. Every single day, the process is the same. I would also recommend feeding your starter at the same time if possible. So give or take an hour. Maybe you can do it at 8 a.m. or 8 p.m., maybe before work or after work, as long as it suits your life, because you do need to allow that starter to have some fermentation and time to grow. It wouldn't be the same, for example, if you had to feed it at 8 a.m. today, and then tomorrow you're feeding it at midnight. It's had too much time from the last time it was fed, and it's much like a pet. So we'll expect feeds at roughly the same time as it's growing and maturing. So I would recommend choosing a time that suits you. Doesn't matter what time of the day it is, as long as it's the same time. It's really essential in that first week to make sure you're providing that starter a lot of stability, almost a routine, and pretend it's a pet living in your kitchen. You cannot miss a feed. You cannot feed it at erratic times, because your starter will not be very happy and will not have a nice fermentation. Once you hit day 7, your starter should be, theoretically speaking, active and ready to go. If you find it's underactive on day 7, you can give it another 2 days feed, wait for that activity to come up, and then you can begin. Hopefully though, in the summer months, as soon as you're at day 7, you should be good to go. It's only really in winter months, sometimes we need to give our starters a little bit more time and a little bit more patience.